Nothing has brought me greater joy than watching the Walt Disney Company absolutely panic over the last few weeks. They're mad at South Park because they're making fun of their woke ideologies, constantly race swapping or religion swapping everything in their movies.
Last week, Disney dropped the teaser trailer for the latest Snow White live-action remake. And unsurprisingly, it's been met with widespread disdain. The trailer racked up over 850,000 dislikes and only 70,000 likes, with the comments section flooded with negativity. This teaser has quickly become one of the most hated trailers of all time, and the movie itself is being criticized as a symbol of everything that's wrong with Disney in 2024. What's almost comical is how badly they've managed to ruin a classic like Snow White, especially when you consider how Disney has handled the changes to the story. To start, the original Snow White was intended to include not only Snow White herself, but also the iconic 7 dwarfs. However, Disney faced criticism when real-life dwarf actors pointed out that, despite the studio's claims of inclusivity, the dwarfs in the new version weren't actually portrayed by dwarf actors. In response to this outcry, Disney decided to make even more changes, ultimately replacing the dwarfs with CGI characters. The result? A visually unappealing disaster. Even though this movie is supposed to be live action, it ends up looking more like a CGI mess, with the magic and charm of the original completely lost in the digital effects. The burning question remains, how did Disney manage to make such a beloved classic look so terrible? It's not just about CGI though. Former Disney fans feel like they've been hit with an onslaught of political messaging, virtue signaling, and celebrity preachiness in recent years. But Snow White seems to be the tipping point. While movies like The Little Mermaid may have been easier to overlook, Snow White has exposed the core issues many fans have with Disney's modern approach to its classics. It all started with the casting choice of the lead actress, Zegler, whose comments about the original Snow White movie left many fans fuming. Zegler infamously called the 1937 animated film extremely dated and claimed the love story between Snow White and the prince was creepy and weird.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Her criticism of the original film came off as dismissive, which didn't sit well with audiences. To make matters worse, the actress didn't seem to have any respect for the iconic role she was stepping into, making it impossible for fans to see her as a fitting Snow White. Disney tried to backpedal and change Zegler's image through PR, but by that point, the damage was already done. The fans saw right through the forced change, and it only made the situation worse. What people loved about the original Snow White was its ability to tap into raw, universal emotions, something that Disney has lost touch with in its recent films. This remake doesn't seem to understand that. Zegler's comments were plastered all over the internet, and they set the tone for the film. As Backlash grew, many fans were confused as to why Disney thought they needed to modernize the story when it was already incredibly successful in its original form. By changing so much, Disney gave the impression that they didn't value their own legacy, nor the fans who helped make these stories legendary in the first place. The backlash continued to intensify when Disney made the controversial decision to alter the dwarfs' roles. Peter Dinklage's comments about the portrayal of dwarfs in the story drew more attention to the issue, with some finding it odd that an actor known for playing fantastical characters would be so vocal about Snow White. In an attempt to avoid further controversy, Disney decided to replace the 7 dwarfs with magical creatures, essentially erasing the beloved characters and the representation they provided for dwarf actors. Fans were furious, not just because Disney caved to the pressure, but because this change came at the cost of an entire group of actors losing a chance to be part of the film. As more set photos leaked, it became clear just how bad the CGI magical creatures would look. Instead of dwarf actors, Disney relied on digital effects, resulting in creatures that looked cheap and entirely out of place. Even though Disney initially denied the leaked photos were from their set, they eventually admitted that the magical creatures would be created with CGI. But no one could have predicted how poorly these creatures would turn out. The overuse of CGI has become a trademark of Disney's recent live-action remakes, with the studio opting to replace practical effects and set designs with digital shortcuts. This approach has made their films feel hollow, soulless, and devoid of the charm that made Disney classics so beloved in the first place. When watching the trailer, it becomes immediately clear why fans are so deeply upset. The visual presentation alone feels like an assault on everything that made the original Snow White enchanting. The CGI dwarfs, rather than adding any semblance of charm or magic, come across as lifeless and overly digital. Their designs lacking the personality and individuality that made the 7 dwarfs so memorable. The animals, which once added whimsy and warmth to the story, now look like they belong in a low-budget video game, rather than a big-budget Disney film. The overall aesthetic of the movie feels cartoonish and oversaturated, as if the filmmakers were more concerned with flashy visuals than with crafting a world that feels tangible and inviting. The result is a film that doesn't just look fake. It feels fake. The soul of the story, the humanity that made audiences fall in love with Snow White in the first place, is completely absent. Instead, what we're left with is a hollow shell, a pale imitation that seems to misunderstand the very essence of the original. While the dwarfs may still be somewhat recognizable through their digital redesigns, the heart and personality that once defined them are gone. This leaves them feeling like background props, rather than the lovable companions they were meant to be. And then there's Snow White herself, who feels like a completely different character altogether. The resemblance to the original princess is almost non-existent, not just in appearance but in essence. Gone is the wide-eyed innocence, the soft vulnerability, and the gentle kindness that made Snow White such an enduring figure in Disney's pantheon of princesses. In their place, we have a protagonist who feels brash and unrelatable, more focused on exuding modernity than embodying the timeless qualities that made her a beloved character. One moment in the trailer perfectly encapsulates this stark shift, when the evil queen poses her iconic question to the magic mirror. Who is the fairest of them all? The camera cuts to Snow White, but instead of the sweet, shy girl we remember, we're met with a smirking, winking Snow White who exudes arrogance rather than grace. It's a jarring moment that feels entirely out of place, stripping the character of her endearing humility and replacing it with an almost smug self-awareness. It's as if the filmmakers were so desperate to modernize Snow White that they forgot what made her relatable and lovable in the first place. A leaked clip only reinforces this troubling transformation. In the video, Snow White is shown instructing the dwarfs on how to clean their own cottage, an act that feels more like scolding than inspiring. The nurturing spirit that defined the original Snow White, her desire to care for others and bring joy to their lives, is nowhere to be found. Instead, her interactions come off as bossy and condescending, further alienating her from the qualities fans cherished. This stark departure from the original character isn't just disappointing, it's emblematic of Disney's recent tendency to overcorrect, crafting heroines who are so intent on showcasing independence and strength that they lose the warmth and relatability that made them iconic. This dramatic change reflects a broader trend in Disney's modern storytelling. Recent films seem preoccupied with pushing a narrative of strong, independent women who are positioned as superior to everyone around them, often at the expense of balanced storytelling. While there's nothing wrong with portraying strong female characters, the execution here feels forced and hollow, as if the filmmakers were more concerned with making a statement than telling a story. This approach alienates fans who yearn for the genuine emotional connections that defined Disney's classics. Despite Disney's attempts to salvage the project, it feels like too much has gone wrong for the movie to recover. The backlash isn't just about a few creative decisions. It's about a fundamental disconnect between the studio and its audience. Fans who grew up with the magic of the original Snow White feel betrayed by a film that not only fails to honor its legacy, but actively undermines it. It's as though Disney has forgotten the very principles that made their stories resonate across generations. timeless characters, heartfelt storytelling, and a respect for the audience's emotional intelligence. Adding to the film's woes are behind-the-scenes controversies, which have only further tarnished its reputation. Rachel Zegler, who plays Snow White, has found herself at the center of several PR disasters. Her dismissive comments about the original film and her self-focused social media presence have made her a lightning rod for criticism. Reports of tensions with her co-stars have only fueled the fire, with some fans interpreting her behavior as indicative of a deeper lack of respect for the project. We'll see how long can Disney keep ruining our childhood. Stay tuned